Hi, and welcome to Screens in Focus, a special Halloween series from Screens in Focus. I'm Diana, and today we are diving into the Flanniverse, the world of Mike Flanagan. From The Haunting of Hill House to Midnight Mass to so many other TV shows and movies. We can't wait to talk about it. We also have TV and movie recommendations for you. Sam is here to join me. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad you're here. Being a knowledgeable Mike Flanagan movie and TV watcher. So,
He's my favorite.
all
I'm
right.
so excited.
I know. Well, before we get into that, I want to pose our question of the day to our friends out there. And the question of the day is, who is your favorite horror director and what stands out in their body of work to you? We would love to know. You can comment here on YouTube or reach out to us on social media. You can get to all of that at screensinfocus.com. All of our social media links are there. They are also in the show notes. And also, you can call us and tell us. And that phone number is 669 223 8542 because we would love to know. And you could be featured in Screens in Focus. Wouldn't that be amazing? All right. So we are going to dive into some of Mike Flanagan's work because he's done quite a bit. And of course, like I said, Sam is the perfect person to do this with because I have watched series and movies, but I didn't realize they were Mike Flanagan's. I just knew I liked these TV movies and series. And I mentioned it to Sam and she said, well, I love Mike Flanagan. I thought, oh, Mike Flanagan, this is a common denominator in all these things that are so great and that I'm watching. So when I was putting together the horror series, I thought, oh my gosh, we have to do an episode on Mike Flanagan's work, and Sam is the perfect person. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk about it. And I really want to start off with The Haunting of Hill House because one, I just truly, that's when I began to know who he really was. And I love this whole series. And I think all the lists that I've seen, it's like at the top of
hmm
all the lists. Like people just love this series for so many reasons. It has family trauma, it's non-linear storytelling, and it has an emotional impact. So tell me what stands out to you in this series.
So I liked Mike Flanagan long before I really knew who he was too. Like he has a series of movies that he has one called Hush that is essentially a hearing impaired woman is in a house writing a book and there's an intruder and that's like it that and that's not really giving anything away and it's just about like that and I didn't know it was him and I watched it and it's like that's so scary anyway and then I knew that the show was coming out so I'm like, oh, of course I'll watch it. But my husband and I were in Portland, Oregon on vacation and I was like, well, I'm not going to wait because I'm not, we're here for a week and a half, like I can't avoid spoilers or anything. So we would watch it. And when I tell you, like, being in someone else's home, because we did it like Airbnbs, was like not the best idea we ever had. And I don't
Oh
think I slept
my
well all
gosh.
week, but I couldn't stop watching it because it was so
No,
good.
you can't.
Mm-mm,
Yes.
so good. But I think so. I don't even know where to begin, Diana. I'm so excited. I think one of my favorite, not even, I guess my favorite episodes of the entire, like, maybe of, not, I'm not going to say of all of his work, but maybe just of Hill House was Two Storms. He does a lot of, I love, my husband's really big into movies and how they're made. So he had a film minor. So he points out all these, like, technical things that Mike Flanagan
Mm,
does. And then I look them up and I'm intrigued. Like he has in that episode, there are a few extended single shot scenes, which just adds and heightens the tension and it also helps you to like immerse yourself in the family tragedy because it's one long shot and it doesn't stop and you just
yeah.
watch it and you're just like going along with it and like poor sweet Nell just yelling and what's going to happen to her so it's heartbreaking and the acting is phenomenal. Like, just that, like, he uses the same actors, which I
Yeah.
approve of because, they all work together, they have great chemistry, but the kids, it's almost like the Stranger Thing kids, like, they're all fantastic actors for being so young, just so good, and
True.
they all look alike too, and that's, like, phenomenal, like, being able to find actors that you could easily believe be, like, the younger versions of the older actors. It's just so good. And I'm not sure what episode this is in, but another thing that I love is, like, he does some kind of, like, jump scares, but they're
Yeah.
not, like, not that jump scares don't have a purpose, but sometimes they're, like, cheap scares, and I feel like
Yeah.
with his jump scares, there's always something more to it. Like, there's a
Yes.
scene where Shirley and Theo are driving, I think to go get Nell or to go do something at the house, and they're they're driving and Nell's supposed to pop out, and Victoria Pedretti was given, like, direction that the other 2 actors weren't, saying, "Come a little bit early," and so their reactions are real, and I know that scene's coming, and it still makes me jump every time, and, like, I don't know if it's gotten worse because I'm expecting it. Their reactions, of course, are real because as Nell is she's full bent neck lady, like, she's got the full horror thing going on.
I want to say about that scene that you're talking about though, that's the scene that like sticks in my brain when I think about this whole series. Like
Mhm,
that sticks out to me. So I watched the series, of course, I loved it, but I did go back and watch an episode or two. And one of the ones that I went back to see was the Bent Neck Lady episode. And it just reminded me of how it's just what such a good storyteller, such good direction, and seeing Nell and her past and just her relationship with her siblings and how alone she felt. It was so hard. And then also, like you said, seeing her from a young girl and seeing when she first saw the bent neck lady
oof.
and I know, just as a small yeah, when she would wake up, and I think for me, one of the reasons this really impacted me is I feel that I have that sleep paralysis, and I thought everybody had that or has experienced that. See, you're
Mm-mm.
saying no either. I went back to work and I was telling them, I said, "Oh, I was rewatching this and she has sleep paralysis." They're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Wait, don't haven't you ever had sleep paralysis?" Now, I'm not awake, I don't think, because otherwise I'm having horror movies,
Yeah.
but I have what I believe are dreams. I'm dreaming of something, something's happening to me, and I can't move
Mhm,
and I can't scream. And I see my husband next to me, and I'm like, "Ah," nothing will come out. It's like
mhm,
I'm trying everything I can to get him to hear me, and he can't, he's just like sleeping. And I'm like, and then something like is happening, like horror type, like different times, different things. This has happened to me several times. This hasn't happened to me just once. It's
mhm,
happened to me a lot. Well, not a lot, not like every day or anything, but what I mean, it's happened to me throughout my life. So the fact that she's having this, I know what she feels like, or
mhm.
I think I do, except for hers are real
Yeah.
experiences with something that's happening. So I,
That must
I,
be
I,
terrifying, by the
I
way. I can't even
yes, it
imagine.
is, but what ends up happening is I end up waking myself up, and what I did read about it, and it is what her eventual husband does tell her is that your brain is awake, but your body isn't yet.
Mhm,
So it's catching up. So what he's telling her as this technician guy is accurate. Because I went and read it myself.
mhm,
So that's what's happening. So I'm like, is that what's really happening to me? Because I feel as though I really am in a dreaming this.
mhm.
And when I actually wake up, then everything's normal. Like I can move, everything's
Yeah.
fine. So I think it's me dreaming. So am I dreaming I'm in having sleep paralysis, or did I really have it because it's in that half awake, half sleeping thing? But I don't know. So the whole point of this is watching her have it, knowing that I'm experiencing something similar,
Mhm.
even though I think mine are dreams, It's so scary. And then also her story along of everything that she's experiencing when she takes her brother to get drugs, and I'm thinking, "Don't do it," but then I understand why she feels she needs to
Yeah.
do it.
I have a twin brother, which is like and he is it's kind of freaky. I'm not like the shortest person, but I'm not the tallest either. I'm like 5'6", and he's like 6'3", and like those two are also like a height difference. So it was like very like eerie,
Mm. Yeah,
like how close it
yeah,
was.
yeah,
But yeah, like it's insane to think about like what you would do for like a sibling. Cause like you see him in pain and you're like, oh, I don't really want to do that, but
yeah. Or any family
oh,
member, that can
absolutely. Oh
happen
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
any
yeah.
family member
Mhm.
too, but yeah, a twin, that's just even different,
Mhm.
even more connected, but it's like, it's wrong, and it's like, "But what do you do? What do you do?" And then they are able to coerce you into, "I need this just for me to go in. Look, I'm getting better."
Mhm.
So the fact that it's all in there, just
It's
the
so
story of
relatable.
all these, yes, so relatable with all of the siblings that are in this. So, yeah, so I just thought that that episode was really just a great episode, and I just loved it.
So there are 5 Crane siblings, and I
Yeah.
learned after watching it that they're all supposed to stand for a stage of grief. So
Oh,
and so Steven's the eldest, and he's denial. He is a
yeah,
nonfiction horror writer who doesn't believe in anything he's writing until the
right.
very end of the season because he's forced to open his eyes and not just try and like rationalize it or brush it aside. So he's denial. And then Shirley is she's like the next eldest and she's anger. So after their mom died, she had to become like the mom of the kids because she's the eldest daughter and we
Yeah,
automatically just hop to. She's the most outwardly resentful and the most angry of all the siblings, which stems when things are out of her control. And as like an adult, she's just this like, she's kind of like a typical like a bee of like a woman and that's like just
yeah,
so and but it's not even Mike Flanagan doesn't write a typical character because she's got a bunch of layers like she had to grow up so early
yeah,
and she didn't get to have a childhood because she had to raise her siblings after her mom died, which I think part of her resentfulness is probably because her younger sister Theo got to kind of be like a kid and they're probably closer in age and that had to have been hard. But
yeah,
Theo stands for bargaining. She has like a power where she can like if she touches a thing then she can feel certain like almost like a memory or something of like what happened. So she wears gloves to kind of control people like to let people in whenever it's like, you know, good for her. And she
yeah,
wears those gloves to stifle any and all of the feelings until she wants to feel a thing. And you see she's like kind of lonely, like she has hookups, but she doesn't have anyone close to her because that would be just hard. She's a middle child who just rationalizes everything. But Luke stands for depression, which that's
uh-huh,
kind of maybe clear, but he uses drugs as a coping mechanism because of the trauma his mom unfortunately inflicted upon him when he was a child. Like she tried to kill him and his sister and the neighbor girl. And then she actually did succeed in killing like the neighbor girl, but that's and to have the rest of the shit happen, oh my gosh, and then your dad, but
right.
um he's haunted by the memories of Hill House and what went down there and just they're in a family like that, how do you cope? And he chooses drugs unfortunately. But Nell's acceptance, oh, it's so sad just thinking about like just oh my god, like she's passed and she's a ghost and she tells all of her siblings that she forgives them for all their mistakes and she
Wow,
sums it
that's
up.
very
It's
powerful.
so powerful and I feel like that is
Yeah,
something that like it's it's like a radical
people don't get
acceptance.
that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, people don't get that. So the fact that, in this, even though they're all facing horror and trauma and all kinds of things, it's kind of nice that they can see her and she can relay that to them in this house.
Mhm. Oh, it's like it's so wonderful what she says, though. It says, "It wouldn't have changed anything. I need you to know that. Forgiveness is warm, like a tear on a cheek. Think of" oh, no, I can't do that. I'm already tearing up. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get it together.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because yeah, that's what happens when you watch something that it just has these emotions, something that
Yeah,
connects with you. I mean,
his characters are
everything
too
that you went
relatable.
through, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I wrote that in there. These characters are relatable, or their circumstances or their situations or whatever it might be. And if you think about it, all these siblings lived, except for the dad knew what happened to the mom, but none of them knew what happened exactly. They just knew their mom wasn't there anymore.
Mhm.
So can you imagine the questions that they had, but they didn't, but they knew this house had such control that
Mhm.
they didn't want to bring it up because, they were just kind of afraid to. So they figured out a way to compartmentalize what they are feeling. And I'm sorry, the reason we're laughing is because I can't say the damn word, or it just won't come out correctly. But anyway, they do because they have to keep on living and keep on going. But they're like, well, what really happened to our mom? Which
Mhm.
they find out in the end. So if you haven't seen it, you should see it. And if you have seen it, then you know what we're talking about. But
Yeah. And it makes it
so it's
so
just their
hard
way
when,
of
like, the
coping.
only adult
Yeah.
in the room doesn't know how to process any of it. He thinks he's protecting his kids, but not telling them exactly what happened, but in the end, he actually makes it worse because
Yeah.
they make up their own stories, and instead of talking about it, they push it down. Like you said, they
Yeah.
compartmentalize, and it's just not healthy. And
Yeah.
then, it affects them in ways they don't even really understand.
I was so mad at that therapist of Nell's telling her to go back to the place. And I know he's just a regular therapist, not realizing that where he's sending her, but just saying, "Oh, you need to confront this and do this." And then she goes and does that. And it's like, okay, that was the worst idea, sending her there to do that. So
I feel like any house that has a name, like, if she talks about Hill House, I'm gonna give it a Google and see, like, because,
I know.
if she's in therapy and she's talking, I'm sure he knows, like, about the deaths and what happened, and I wouldn't, I would probably do my own. Maybe that's just because I grew up in a world where, like, you know, that kind of stuff happens, and maybe it's supposed to be like, like how they never call a thing a zombie because they don't really know what a zombie is. So maybe it's like that where they don't have this in that universe.
Well, I have to say we've learned a lot from watching all these horror and zombie and everything else. Like we know how to not there's still probably a lot to learn, but we have some inklings of how we handle things or how we see things, or if we saw a house called Hill House and
Yeah.
go, yeah, let's just do think about what this means before
hmm
we go walking in.
But I think the kind of things that we're talking about though definitely is just it's a testament to how Flanagan can blend horror with human drama. The hauntings
Yeah.
aren't just external, but that they're also internal in a way. And he definitely explores how trauma and grief can take on a haunting life of their own, emphasizing that the emotional scars of the past can be just as terrifying as like any ghost. Like, and what I do kind of, if there is kind of, I don't even know, like my takeaway from the show is that like people who die in the house, they're kind of always around, like in the house. And as long as the house exists, like they're going to be there. And I feel like that's the same for anyone who's lost a loved one. Is like just because they're gone doesn't mean they're not necessarily, I'm not saying like with you, but like you have your
Uh,
memories and you have the
yeah.
stories. And like I've lost
Yeah.
both of my parents and I talk about them all the time. Like I don't have any new stories, but they were funny people. And I feel like
Mhm.
that's such a, it's just a, I don't know. I'll never not talk about them as long as I'm alive.
Right.
And I think
Right.
that's
Because
also
that
why I
was
related a lot to like
yeah.
the Hill House is
Yeah.
because it was just so good.
Yeah, it is. It is. Talking about the characters and just all of the themes that we can relate to. I also do want to mention the flashbacks that he
hmm
uses in this because that's a majority of what he does, and that's how we learn things is through seeing what they experienced as kids, what they experienced in that house. And I love that kind of storytelling already. So when it starts and we know we're going to learn by experiencing these flashbacks and seeing them at different ages, I'm all in because I absolutely love that kind of storytelling.
Mm-hmm. So I love the ending of Hill House so very much because even though it is kind of wrapped up nice and neatly, there's a little bit of a question of did they actually make it out or are they stuck in the red room? Because the very final scene is all of them around like a table with a cake in front of them and they're celebrating Luke's 2-year sobriety. But behind them is the window and the red room, which is a huge part of Hill House and their childhood. So the red room, each child was in there without really knowing that they were in there because the red room gave them what they needed. So for Nellie, it was a toy room. For Luke, it was a treehouse. For Theo, it was a dance studio. For Stephen, it was a game room. And for Shirley, it was a family room. Even the parents had a thing. So Olivia had a reading room. And I guess the dad didn't get anything. Sorry, they include the mom, but not the dad. That's very weird. And in the back of each of like the rooms for each of the people, there's a window. And I think it's always like the same kind of length. So at the end of the final episode, when they're all in the red room around the cake, kind of celebrating, there's a
Yeah.
window behind them. So it's kind of, you're like, did they make it
Mm.
out? And I love that it's open to interpretation and conversation, which is something that
Yeah.
also Mike Flanagan does so well.
I forgot about that. So that is so cool
Mm-hmm.
of not really knowing. You're right. Is it 2 years? Do they have, because you're right. If they're in a room that it gives them everything they want
Would they
and
ever
they
leave?
appear to be happy. Yeah. Are they in the room getting what they want, or
Mm-hmm.
did they make it out and get what they want?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
And it's kind of
So
nice
good.
too because like at the very end they're all around this cake and they all get some kind of happy ending. Like Luke is
Yeah.
celebrating 2 years, Steven's having a baby with his wife, Theo brings her girlfriend around, and Shirley tells her husband that she cheated, but they've started to reconcile, so even she's getting a happy ending. And it's just so like, which makes it all the more tragic because if they're all dead, but then I guess Trish probably wouldn't be there because Theo brings her girlfriend and but also it might be in her imagination, so.
Exactly. That might be true. Might be in her imagination.
Mm-hmm.
In her imagination. You just never know. Oh my gosh. Woo, I love that. And I also want to just bring up, and it doesn't happen just in this series here, but in Mike Flanagan in his work, I love the use of flashbacks
Mm-hmm.
because and it is in this particular series. We do see them as at their age that they are now, and then we go back to when they are kids and
Mm-hmm.
everything they experience. And I just love it. I love the flashbacks and such and that type of storytelling. I just think it's great.
Well,
So
it's kind of
I'm
nice
all
because,
in
like,
when
like
something.
they say that, like, you should, like, show, don't tell. And I feel like even though, like, there's, like, dialogue and things, it's still more of a show than just, like, you could tell me the same story, but it's a lot easier if you can,
Yeah.
like, see it. Because there's more emotion
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. As you can tell, we really liked The Haunting of Hill House. So, but there are others that we absolutely love too. And,
Mm-hmm.
Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and just other movies that he has done. So, Sam, would you want to share maybe one of those TV shows or movies
Yeah.
that stuck out to you? One of his other works?
So I really enjoyed a Bly Manor, which came on the heels of The Haunting of Hill House, and I expected it to be not the same as Hill House, but I guess just as scary as Hill House was because there were that show had so many like good just like scares, and there were ghosts that you looked for, which also continued into Bly Manor. Like I love going back on like a rewatch and trying to find like all the ghosts and looking them up and seeing what they are. But what I love most about Bly Manor is it focuses on both loss and the inability to move on. It
Mm.
deals with how grief can affect people and on how dwelling on loss and grief hurts those who are still around. I love how it talks about how being stuck in grief prevents the grieving from moving on and living their lives. But like I said earlier, unlike Hill House, Bly Manor wasn't as scary, but it focused more on atmosphere and mood because it was tense and it was suspense. And like there were some scary and creepy things, but it wasn't the same type of horror. It was more
Yeah.
it was more of a gothic horror, I think. The core theme of Bly Manor, in my opinion, is love, whether that's romantic, familial, or platonic. But then on the flip side of that, it talks about how, or it explains how love can also become twisted and obsessive and tragic.
Mm.
So like you see the love between Peter and Rebecca and how like it gets obsessive so quickly, and not, spoilers, but like some bad stuff happens. But then you see like the love between Danny and Jamie, which is like romantic, and then you see Viola and Perdita, and that was like familiar. And then Hannah and Owen, which I guess is supposed to be the example for platonic, but I don't necessarily know that I agree with that the more I think about it, because they were, I don't even know, not that you have to ship every character, but there was something between them, I think, and they were so sweet to each other between all of those, because Viola and Perdita were like the first ones. Then you had Hannah and Owen and kind of Danny and Jamie, but that just illustrates how love can transcend time, but also keep people in the past, because even though not all the ghosts in Bly Manor, they're not all evil, but they're all a lingering presence of love, grief, and memory, showing that when love, when it's unresolved or obsessive, can be a form of haunting.
Yeah.
If you can never move on, then that's a haunting of its own, right? And
Yeah.
it's just,
Hmm.
oh my god, and it makes you think, and it's so just it's just what I love about him so much.
Yeah.
He uses horror as a tool to explore emotional and psychological things as well. Like the ghosts in Bly Manor are not malicious, but the remnants of those individuals who were shaped by their own emotional struggles. Like they all had some kind of inner turmoil or inner demons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like Viola, she's like the lady of the lake, and she haunts Bly Manor because of her obsessive desire to hold on to her own life and her possessions. And her refusal to let go of her earthly attachments turns her into a ghost, one who unknowingly brings death to others. Like, I don't know how many people she's actually killed, and that, then their ghosts are kind of floating around or doing whatever. And that's just, adds to all of like the sadness. Danny, she takes on the spirit of Viola, the lady in the lake, and she's able to keep her at bay. But she knows eventually that she's gonna have to go back to Bly Manor, because she's either gonna harm like someone around her, or she's just gonna go and take care of it herself. And that is so tragic, because we all have an expiration date, and it makes you think, and you feel so bad for Danny, because that's the love of her life, and it got cut short because of some tragic happenstance of her deciding to be a nanny in this, in this like English estate. And oh my gosh, all the houses that they're in, and like the sets. I don't know. Mike Flanagan's just, he knows what he's doing, I think.
Mike Flanagan, he just knows how to tell a story. I did watch Bly Manor. I did enjoy it. I know I really liked it when I
Hmm.
saw it, but I haven't seen it since. So it's hard for me to remember all the details. But one of the other series that I did really enjoy was Midnight Mass. And I remember that standing out to me as like, oh, I really like this type of horror story. And
Hmm.
I think because it did deal with, it blended horror with faith, and it just explores religious fanaticism and its dangers,
Hmm.
and more it's even more than that. But I think that initially that was intriguing to me, and so that is why I tuned in. And we see these people on this island, and to me the central themes were human need for forgiveness, which
Hmm.
is interesting because I heard you say that about The Haunting of Hill House,
Hmm.
about having forgiveness. So he probably tends to have some of that, some of those scenes, play throughout different movies or TV series
Hmm.
that he does. And it's also forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself, and seeking that forgiveness, like, trying to get that forgiveness, or, what you think you need. And it also drives people for their personal growth, and to relieve that guilt. I mean, that's what you want, right?
Hmm.
You want that forgiveness so that it'll relieve some of that, and just connect to a spiritual peace. So in Midnight Mass, we saw so many people looking for this, where we saw Father Paul's confession for his desire, his younger self, wanting that forgiveness. We saw that with Riley's struggle. So Riley, I don't know if he's the main character in the beginning,
Mhm.
I suppose. So, but he grapples with the guilt of his past actions, because this is not giving anything away, because the very first episode, very first thing we see is what appears to be like a death of maybe a DUI or
It was, yeah,
yeah.
he's
So
drunk driving and he hits another car
yeah,
and like a 16-year-old girl dies or something like that.
dies, right? And
Mhm.
she goes to, or he goes to jail. And when he's released, he goes back home, which is where he's going
Crockett
to this
Island.
island.
Mhm.
Yeah, Crockett Island, which is where they live. So, and then we see Bev, her fanaticism. And, she's just an extreme.
Nutcase.
Yeah, exactly. And
She's
how,
a bad person. She's a bad character. Or she's a good character, but
yeah,
a bad person.
yeah, well, because she doesn't have empathy or forgiveness, but she claims to be like this super religious
She's
person.
super pious.
And I think we might have you talked about this earlier on, about how all the characters are in other series, but they're playing different
Mhm.
I mean, they're the same actors,
Yep.
different characters. But it's funny here, because when I was going back and watching several of episodes of different ones, I said, "Oh, that's so and so.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so and so." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So I didn't realize it, especially in the first one.
Oh yeah.
I saw it, I knew the characters, but then
Because
when
she
I'm
played
watching the second one, or this
Steve's
one,
wife.
yeah, yeah. So it's just, you see them, throughout playing different roles. And then there's Erin, her acceptance. So, she embodies that personal growth, accepting her mistakes and seeking forgiveness, even in the face of tragedy. So we do see all these characters, reaching for that.
Mhm.
And I know you probably love this series too. So what did you think about this one?
I loved it. I don't even know. There's just it wasn't what I was expecting. Like I said,
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect a lot of the time when it comes to Mike Flanagan
Right.
stuff. I just know I'm gonna watch it. But
Yeah.
I'm not very religious, but I grew up in a very religious family. So this is like hitting home with like just all of it. And it was so good. It makes you think, I don't know, it's just so good. But it's also like genuinely creepy and scary at times. Like
Yeah.
there's like, because there's a vampire in it, and he's this creepy like winged thing, and you don't really get to see it until like you do, but like you see him like skulking around and like doing stuff, and that sometimes is creepier than actually like seeing him as like in his full glory, because you're like, yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
terrifying, but my imagination's worse.
Yeah.
um Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love the pieces that we see that when we don't know what's happening, because initially we don't know what's happening. We're like, oh, we see these cats. Why are all these cats dead
Mm-hmm.
on the beach? And then later on, and then they talk about the missing
That poor.
priest
Yep.
initially, and like, oh, why didn't he come back? And why is this new person coming? And then, oh, something came to my mind. Oh, the doctor's mom, and how she starts aging backwards like
Yeah.
a lot. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, holy crap, you look younger than your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Again, people in the other series. So it's just, the story just keeps unfolding, and all these layers, and all just learning about everybody. So it's just, and even Riley's parents, and such. So it's just, he's so good. Mike Flanagan's so good at creating these characters and stories and themes that we see.
I think he's so good at it because he's not afraid to ask like difficult existential questions, like about life and death and the afterlife. And I think it's hard to hit on religion because it's a hard topic to talk about, because it's
Yeah.
so controversial, and it's a hot topic or something. Not that not the old clothing shop, but
Oh.
but I've read it a few places that Midnight Mass, it actually touches upon. So Mike Flanagan, he is, I think, many years like completely sober, which is fantastic, and kudos to him, and we love that. So
Yeah.
Midnight Mass, I think Riley is his way of kind of like writing about like maybe his journey a little bit and being able to forgive
Ah,
himself for
yeah,
all the things that he
yeah.
may have done. I don't know what he's done, but I'm assuming if he's still
Right,
hurt, you know,
right.
like
Yeah,
you know,
putting parts of yourself
yep,
into a writing or exploring that at least
yeah.
if this had happened, how, how would I feel and how would I relate to people and what would happen?
And
So,
then I think
yeah,
the character of Erin is such a good character because she's kind of how we all should be. We should forgive ourselves for things that we've done because we are just human. And
yeah,
like, oh, it's just Mike Flanagan at his best. And
yeah.
there's one scene that I'm not going to say anything about, but it's like there's a thing that's happening. You don't really know what it's two characters, they're talking, something happens and it cuts to black and you just hear the noises of what's happening. And I sometimes still think of that and it gives me chills. I was
Yeah.
watching it with my brother and my husband, and I think we all were just like, where's the dog? Let's go hug the dog. Like we can't, that's like, so we had to like turn it off, turn the lights on. And we're like, no, ma'am, it is too much.
Do you know I was watching a lot of people on YouTube watching the Haunting of Hill House, and they were making some of them were making me laugh
Hmm.
because they were hiding their. I mean, that's how I would be.
Oh, I
Like, I
watch it
should
like
probably
this.
put a camera and watch. Yeah, they you see them go like
Mhm.
this, or they're like, they put their shirt up. They're like, oh my god, it's so funny because I do that too.
Oh
But it's
yeah.
funny watching somebody else's reaction.
Mhm.
Watching them watch this.
It's
But
so good.
all to say that we love Mike Flanagan. He scares the heck out of us. He's such a great storyteller. He has great characters. And so, Sam, tell me what of all, of his work in a broader sense, what resonates with you?
So I think what I love most about him and why I think I can go back and watch the same episodes and I'll watch anything that he puts out because I know that his shows and his movies are always about more than they appear to be on the surface. Like you have to dive deeper to really like it's not just a horror movie, it's not just a love story. It's way more than that. And I love that in almost every TV show, there's usually a unifying theme which makes the discussion and repeat viewings more fun. He writes his characters well, and you feel for them. Like, even though Bev Keane was such a jerk face, I did feel
Hmm.
really bad for her at the very end when she's trying to dig in the sand to get under, to get away from the sun. And I was like, oh my God, like maybe she'll finally get there. And I hated her. I was like rooting for her to like
Right,
something bad
right.
to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Um, because the characters feel like they're real. They
Yeah.
are well realized people. They're not cardboard cutouts. It's not
Yeah.
necessary. The stories themselves not necessarily are about the scary things that happen, but they're more about the characters and how they deal with those
Yeah.
events. He certainly knows how to create tension. He lets it build, and then he releases it like a rubber band with a climactic scene, like Two Storms or the scene I was just describing about how we turn on all the lights and it makes you it's just anyway. But then he uses
Yeah.
jump scares, like I said earlier in the pod. He makes jump scares so much better than anyone else. They're not typical. They're not done for cheap. They're done in impactful ways like this that scene we were talking about earlier in the car, they're arguing and they're not paying attention and Nell needs them to get their shit together. And by scaring them, they like stop and then they, fight it out and then they go do what they're supposed to do. But if she hadn't have done that, or if there hadn't been that jump scare, then it would have just been an annoying scene of siblings like kind of bickering and doing stuff. It's just
Right.
so good. So, so good.
So I have the same answer
Mm-hmm.
that you do. I have, well, one, I have that it's scary, that we feel for the characters. They're strong characters. They're the reoccurring actors, and they have these long monologues,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of times there isn't that much of a monologue, but you have people really saying how they feel, and that's coming across to us.
And it's
And they're
impactful.
emotional. Yeah, they're emotional stories. And something that you had said earlier about how, and yes, there's the jump scares, but they're there intentionally and it really does scare you and add to the story. But when you were talking about how some of these shots are long shots, and I was thinking about when the dad in The Haunting of Hill House was walking down the
Oh,
hallways, and when he
woo.
turns, it's different people at different ages or different shadows, and you're like, what? And then you're like, that's when those people were putting their shirts up and
That's
everything
me.
else and looking, because you don't know what you're going to see, because in a horror anything can be there. It could be the past, the future, a ghost,
Mhm.
who knows, a monster, your child, whatever it
Mhm.
is. So nothing, a different room, a different time. So all of that, playing with all of that, is just such great storytelling. And I just think it all, the emotion of it all, and connecting, and thinking about forgiveness and putting ourselves in those situations. So I think that that's what resonates with all of us and why we tune in all the time.
I feel like even though like we talked about how scary it is, the things that are quote unquote scary aren't necessarily, they're not inherently scary. Like there's like a big tall guy who like floats around, which is terrifying, but it's just a guy. Like he's abnormally big, but it's not like an alien or a zombie or like a werewolf or something where it's like, it's more like passively scary. It's not as unbelievable, maybe. Oh my gosh. I love that.
Yeah. After talking about these things that we love from Mike Flanagan, I would love to know, what is your personal favorite? What is your favorite series, your favorite film, or maybe just a piece?
So I really love The Haunting of Hill House. That's like my favorite, a TV show of his. But I really, really, really love Doctor Sleep. I've never seen The Shining, so I didn't really know anything going into it. But like I looked it up and read enough to know like the backstory of it, and it was just so good. And I feel like people didn't it didn't get the attention it deserved because it's such a phenomenal movie. So it's with a Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson. Then you got Cliff Curtis, Zahn McClarnon, who was phenomenal in Dark Wind on AMC. Fantastic. And I just feel like it deserved more than it got. I don't know really know why. Have you seen it?
Yes, I love it. I was going to say, I am 100% on track agreeing with you on my personal favorite. It
Mm-hmm.
is The Haunting of Hill House and Doctor Sleep. I haven't seen Doctor Sleep in a while, but when it came out, because I remember I really wanted to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to watch this. But when I watch it, I was totally floored. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this is fantastic. And I have seen The Shining. The Shining is not my favorite movie, but I
Mm-hmm.
know it's so, because I kept saying, God, it's such a, people are revering this movie. And I would try to watch it. I'm like, this really isn't my favorite type
Yeah.
of horror movie. But you know the impact of it, you know what's happening. It's basically like this house having this hold on you. And so when I watched Doctor Sleep, I just thought it was so good. It was very kind of refreshing in a
Mm-hmm.
way. So I totally agree with you with that being one of my personal favorites. All right. So, friends out there, we've talked about Mike Flanagan and all of his works, not all of his work, some of his work. There's a lot more movies out there. So, go check those out because there's so much more. And there's a lot more series that we didn't even touch upon here that are on Netflix that we do appreciate and like. But we wanted to touch upon our favorite works here. And so, with that, the question of the day was, who is your favorite horror director? What movie or series of theirs stands out to you the most? So I have a feeling I might know yours,
Yeah.
but who would you say, Sam? Who would you say?
Um, Probably Mike Flanagan. I don't really typically care about who directs stuff or pay attention to like repeat things. This first like director, whatever you want to call it, where I'm like, no, everything he's doing, I'm gonna watch. So
I
it's really
love
rare
that.
for me because
Yeah.
everything
And
he
a lot of
does
people,
just gets so he just I think he's getting better the more he does stuff. He gets, because you learn as you go along, and I don't think he's afraid to like just try new things. And like he's got a new Exorcist project coming out, I think like next year or in 2 years maybe. And I love the original Exorcist, so I'm in. What about you?
yeah. Well, this is hard. And I've seen a lot of horror in my day. I mean, Hitchcock, we talked about him earlier, and I love so many Hitchcock movies. I just like the feel of them. Mike Flanagan, everything that we've talked about, he has done like numerous things that are so amazing. M. Night Shyamalan is so great. I love his work. So I love that there are horror directors, filmmakers that we really love. But I'm going to say right now, I'm really loving Jordan Peele.
Woo!
He's
I knew
just
that.
because I just can't help it. Yeah, I'm just so fascinated with what he does. And I'm going to watch everything Mike Flanagan does too. But with you saying like, oh, I'm going to watch everything he does. That's how I feel about Jordan Peele. It's like,
Hmm.
I'm going to watch everything he does. So that's who I would pick. But, friends out there, we want to know who your favorite director is in horror. And please share it with us here on YouTube, on social media. And don't forget, you can reach us by calling us at 669 223 8542 because we would love to hear from you and know who your favorite director is. We are at our Fresh Screams segment where we're going to share with you our latest TV and movie recommendations or what we're excited to watch. So, Sam, what do you have for us today?
So I have a few things that I'm excited to watch. I'm really pumped for Agatha All Along. And I know when this comes out, it'll probably be on episodes like 3 or 4 or something like that. But I'm so excited for it. I'm actually kind of excited for Grotesquerie, which is going to be on FX, and it's Ryan Murphy. I think it's his like next, not quite American Horror Story, but I think it's him trying to do American Horror Story, maybe a little more not adult, but maybe more rooted in like I say like real, but I think it still has some like ghosts or like spooky things, but I don't think it's gonna be quite as like wacky as American Horror Story was. And then I'm actually really, really excited for What We Do in the Shadows. It's the sixth and final season, and that's going to be also on FX, and that starts on October 21st. And I think that show is something that has just gotten better the longer it's been on. I love all the cameos. I love just it's just so fun. So I'm looking forward to
I love
that.
those. Yeah, I love all those. Okay, so for me, I watched From. This
Ooh.
is on Prime and it's an MGM series. I just watched it like in the last 3 weeks,
Mhm.
maybe. I binged both the two seasons, and the third
Yeah.
season is coming out on September 22nd, which by the time this airs, it'll be out. Oh my gosh, I was so scared because I was watching it by myself.
Mhm.
And every night when I had to let my dog out to
Mm-mm.
go to the bathroom, I was a little bit worried. I had to look out. Can I let him out? Yeah, I can let him out because it's dark out.
Mhm.
And so, if anyone who hasn't watched this, it's about these people that are stuck in a city. They don't know how they got there, meaning, their vehicle stumbles upon this broken, fallen down tree, and then they start circling the city or this town, not city, this town,
Mhm.
and then they're stuck there. And they all come from different states and places, and they don't know how they get here, and they can't get out, and there's monsters at night.
Oh, no,
So
thank
it's
you.
very scary. It's very scary. So Harold Perrineau is in this, and he is from Lost. That's what I know him from, and he's just so good. He's the sheriff, mayor of the town. Have you seen this?
Mm-mm. No, but I've seen commercials for it, and I think it was like around this time. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna watch a scary thing before I go to bed. So, but it's definitely like on my list though because I actually love him. He's fantastic. Harold Perrineau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has. I can't wait for the third season. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to watch it. I don't know why. I want to be scared now. I'm like, I want to be scared. It's good. It's a good story. I like it. So I'm trying to get my husband to watch it. So we'll see. And I do want to bring up, we are talking about Mike Flanagan. So he has done a lot of work with Stephen King's, with Gerald's Game, and also with Dr. Sleep,
Mhm.
right? So there's stories of Stephen King. So now I heard about this Life of Chuck that is getting all the
Mhm.
buzz
Getting
at
rave
the
reviews.
Toronto, yeah, at the Toronto International Film Festival. It just won the People's Choice Award, which is one of the highest honors there. And also, I guess it can be connected to possibly winning an Oscar. So who's to say? Could it be in the realm? Could a horror get in there? I don't know, but it'll be fun to find out. So I'm looking forward to whenever we'll be able to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when. I looked it up. There was no release date to us. It's just at the festival for now. So, and it has 85% Rotten Tomatoes as of now. So that could go up. We don't know. And I also want to bring up Halle Berry returns to horror with Never Let
Oh,
Go.
I just saw commercials for
And
this. Oh.
yeah, that comes out September 20th. Look for that movie because it looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's an emotional supernatural thriller. It's about a mother and her protecting her sons from an insidious force in the
Ooh.
forest. A survival tale.
Oh,
We love survival. So,
I do, but I also hate forests, so I'm not gonna. That's just gonna make me like
uh,
never want to go out in out in a
oh
forest.
my gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. That's what we have recommended for you. We would love to hear your Halloween watch list. You can give us a shout at Screens of Focus at 669-223-8542. And make sure to tune in to our next episode on the Many Faces of Fear. We're going to talk about zombies and paranormal and all kinds of horror. So be sure to tune into that because we have spooky goodness for you. I want to thank Sam for being here today. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast. It's finally nice to make another person listen to me blather on about Mike Flanagan other than my husband and my dog. I'm sure they're like, oh, yeah, go talk to Diana like a little bit.
Yes, please come talk to me. I love it. I'm so glad that we did this podcast episode. It's always fun talking with you about any TV or movies, but I knew this one would fit you so good, and it does. And you had just so much great insight and a wealth of knowledge. So I love it. And I love it when people are just as passionate about certain TV or movies that impact them or that they can relate to. So thank you. Okay, thank you, friends out there, for joining our Screams in Focus series. We are grateful you joined us, and we hope something that we said today inspired you, made you smile, or even gave you the heebie jeebies, or made you want to go watch one of the movies that we're talking about. Don't forget to subscribe to Screens in Focus at screensinfocus.com. All of our information is there. So just go to our website. It's also in our show notes. And I want to remind you to share this podcast with a friend because we would love more people in our TV community. And I want to remind you to keep watching, keep exploring, and keep those screens in focus. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.